Testing 1, 2, 3.
Good morning. On behalf of Mayor Pro Tem Whitehead, the Commission, Manager Fuentes, and staff, welcome to the business meeting of the City Commission of the City of Truth and Consequences. It is now August 23rd, 2017 at 9 o'clock. If you have any instrument on your person that makes a noise, could you please silence it? We would appreciate that. Madam Clerk, can we have roll?
Honorable Steve Green.
Here.
Honorable Sandra Whitehead.
Here.
Honorable Kathy Clark.
Here.
Honorable Ralph Hessler.
Here.
Honorable Joshua Franco.
Present.
Mr. Mayor, we have a quorum.
Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is silent meditation, and before I ask for 15 seconds of silent meditation, yesterday we lost a member of the extended family of the staff and the government of Truth or Consequences. Our past clerk, Judy Harris, her husband, Harold Doug Harris, died suddenly yesterday. It is a tragedy, as all death is. It is a loss, and it's a personal loss for many of us who worked with Judy for many, many years. So during the silent meditation, I would ask that you keep thoughts and prayers for the Harris family. Thank you. Thank you. The next item is the pledge. Mayor Pro Tem Whitehead, please lead us now, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. As presented.
I have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Whitehead. I need a second.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Franco. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously. Thank you. The next item is comments from the public. So before we open up to those in the audience, the commissioners have received some emails of people who could not be in attendance today, and they've asked us to read those emails so they become a part of the permanent record of this meeting. So I will start with Mayor Pro Tem Whitehead, please.
Mayor, if I may, as a matter of procedure, I won't be timing these comments. I've reviewed them. They're all short.
Right.
And we can get them all under 3 minutes. So forgive me if I don't time.
Very good, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Mayor Pro
Thank you.
Tem.
Good morning. My name is Anna Lennart, a homeowner on Yucca Street in Tier C. I would like to voice my objection to the explosions at the gun range. These events are well beyond the intended use of the gun range and are becoming bigger and more frequent. I think they should be prohibited. If they are to continue, the city needs to accept the responsibility of damage, repair, and furnish proof of specific liability insurance in the case of injury. I would also remind the Commission of the proximity to the interstate, where unexpected drivers are traveling at 75 miles per hour. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Commissioner Ashland.
Yes, I have a letter. I'm not able to make out the name. It's addressed to Mayor Green. I'm all about people exercising their constitutional rights to blow stuff up and shoot giant guns, but it seems to me that there might be a better place to do that within city limits. I realize that Impact Ministries and the local law enforcement officers did what they did legally and gave notice, but it sounded like World War III out there. The veterans at the Vets Center probably did not have a very good day. My pets were terrified, and it seems excessive as well as dangerous to use tannerite within city limits. After just very minimal and limited research on tannerite, I would question the use of it so close to any population. I also realized that notices about when and where the explosives celebration was going to take place were supposedly posted in 3 Facebook groups, yet most of the population here is older. Many of them don't even use Facebook. I am on Facebook a lot of the time, and even I didn't see anything posted beforehand. I had to go into a local Facebook group and ask about the explosion. I don't live too far from the shooting range, so it was concerning to hear what sounded like cannons being fired. I'm sure the explosions could be heard very well at the vet center, as people were commenting on Facebook that they could hear it at the lake. One resident had her window shattered. Another resident, who is also a veteran, said it shook him up, and his dog as well. This also happened at a time when U.S. tensions were running high, right after a Nazi rally turned violent, and the country is more divided and scared than it has been in a long time. I would never suggest that such a fine, godly church such as Impact Ministries not be allowed to blow stuff up, though perhaps maybe what was spent on explosive might have better served the poor or homeless in the area, like Jesus probably would have wanted, but who am I to judge? However, perhaps they could take the explosive out of the city limits into a vast area of unpopulated land that literally surrounds us for miles in every direction. Or at the very least, they could not just post warnings on Facebook, but also in the paper with enough notice and maybe on the radio. Perhaps they should directly inform the Veterans Center and the local animal groups and businesses so that people who do not belong to the church and those specific groups can also have notice. Thank you.
Thank you, and I have two short ones. Thank you, Commissioner. One is from Shirley Corrons, C-O-R-R-O-N-S, all residents of TRC. I was one affected by the loud booms from the Tamarite. My windows rattled. Fortunately, none broke. I am on Yucca Street. It also was loud over on Simpson and Nickel. I had to go put my daughter's dog in the house. He was freaking out. The same thing happened about a year ago by same people. I would like something to be done to prevent this happening in the future. And an email from a woman, Susan Moore, resident of TRC. This document is pertaining to the agenda item concerning the gun range. First, let me say that I knew the gun range was located near my house when we moved here, and I have no problem with that. What I do have a problem with is the use of Tamarite and explosive. During the recent use of Tamarite at the gun range by Impact Ministry, shocks and noise were felt at the Veterans Home by the river and on the other side of town. People and animals were adversely affected. Someone's windows were broken. There were some complaints from people, especially veterans, who are afflicted with PTSD. As I said, I live nearby and my whole house shook and my animals were terrified. My first thought, having been in a couple, was, quote, earthquake. I understand the sport of shooting guns. I don't understand the idea of explosives for all. I think Tannerite needs to be banned from the gun range. Tannerite's own website discourages using any around neighborhoods or towns. It's blowing up things, specifically targets, is needed. If blowing up things, specifically targets, is needed by the church, the police, and others. Please find a place away from other people and town to do it. Everyone shouldn't have to suffer for the needs or wants of a few. Thank you.
Commissioner. All right. Honorable Commissioners and Mayor, this is from Destiny Mitchell, 815 Copra. First, the window rattling, animal freaking, PTSD-inspiring actions of Impact Ministries, which took place a few weekends ago, sincerely made quite an impact on many community members in close proximity to the shooting range on North Copra. However, it was also felt in downtown TRC and all the way out on East 3rd. I am all for the celebration of one's faith. However, many people felt uncomfortable and uninformed about the practices. My suggestion would be to maybe move them to, say, the gun range or maybe somewhere out towards Angle or the spaceport instead of TRC's backyard. Should the rituals be allowed to continue, it would be nice if notice was given specifically to the neighboring residents, possibly with complimentary noise deafening earmuffs, so that people are at least adequately prepared. Then there's a second statement also from Destiny Mitchell, 815 Copra. I will suffice to say that we have spent well over $1 million in the past 10 years with renovation, upkeep, and pool cover to ensure the pool is open all year around, as was the residents' desires. I know several years ago there was talk about partnership with schools to build a new pool. I am not sure where the commission stands on that issue, but it seems a waste to me to go that route, which indeed would take many, many more years and lots more money, when the only thing holding our current pool from lasting another 20 years is a pool resurface to the tune of about $70,000, based on previous quotes. Every year, the state inspector requests a resurface, and many people feel it would be in the best interest of the city to fix our old pool instead of abandoning it in pursuit of a new and improved one in the future. It is analogous to buying a new car. If you never rotate the tires or change the oil or maintain it, you'll be buying a new one sooner rather than later, whether you want to or not. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. We'll open it up now to the public for public comments. 3 minutes. Yes, ma'am. Please state your name, and if you have any information that you want to become as part of the record of this meeting, there's a black box you can just put it in.
No,
Yes,
I
ma'am.
probably just need 2 minutes. I'm Susan Brandt, I'm with the Cobblestone, and I wanted to take time out to thank everyone for their support. We had our first wacky triathlon. It was a hit, it was success. Everyone had a great time. We got it done, so that was the greatest thing. I had 5 cases of butterflies I was willing to share that week before. The city clerk's office, the city parks department, down with the overall supervisor, they were all great. We only had one problem that I do want to bring to the commission's attention, and that was the fact that even though we did meet with the police chief and go over our map and everything on Monday prior to, we had no police coverage. That day, one of the volunteers did see the officers at the police department. They pointed down to our direction, they got in their vehicle, and they left. That person couldn't be here to support me because she's in the hospital. She had surgery yesterday. We did put the weather, 3:30 below, it's downpouring at Sonic. We called everybody as soon as they could get there. We threw the barricades up, and we did our thing. People did not stop. They would slow down and go through the route of the backwards marathon. That does create a hazard. I did have $1 million insurance policy that protected me. You were listed as a secondary insuree as required. So you were protected, but it is something that I wish to be looked into because next year's triathlon will be August the 11th. We already have businesses from outside of the market that are volunteering to be sponsors for the event. So it's going to be even bigger and better next year. We already have everybody that competed this year who signed up for next year, and we have about 15 people who have already showed interest in competing next year. So this would be an interest. And then the last thing that I have is I do want to kind of give you all notice that I will be talking to you between now and the 15th of next month because the Cobblestone will once again be having their Pie in the Face fundraiser at the county fair. Thank you for your time, and you'll have a nice day.
Thank you. Anyone else want to address the commission? Yes, sir.
My name is Debbie Jo Pipkins. I live on 2335 South Broadway on Winter Haven Trailer Park. And we're having some issues there. Nothing's getting done. And we need to get something done because all the people are moving out of there. I have 4 people moving out of there right now. And the only reason we're moving out of there is because we got evicted because we complained about another trailer right next to us. It's supposed to be moved 15 feet from our trailer, and in the back of it, it's 11 feet. And nothing's getting done with it. I've talked to the CEO. He told them that they could have the trailer there, and it's illegal. And they're not even from here. They're from Albuquerque. They're just here to make a buck. They don't care what happens to the people that live here. And I'm fed up with it. I'm not gonna take it no more. Because now I'm evicted. Just because of that reason I got evicted. And I just put a $5,000 ramp on my trailer there. So that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. And sir, your last name again? I didn't hear it.
Pipkins?
Pipkins?
Yeah, Pipkins.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else want to address the commission? Yes, sir.
Honorable Mayor and Commissioners and City Manager and Clerk, my name is Isaac Eastfold, Ike for short. I live at 1301 North Silver. and I want to bring two brief issues to your attention. We are in the process of moving from Albuquerque, where we lived for 32 years. It's become relatively intolerable to live there, and we're very happy to be here. We purchased the property, which is part of the Barbara Nelson estate. John Wheeler was the attorney for the estate, and Renee Stamper was our title person. In the time we've been there, without really looking, we have.
Just one second. Thank you.
In the time we've been there, on and off, we've identified 41 species of birds around the property. This is an indication of a very healthy Chihuahuan desert ecosystem. And just in short walks, we have found fossils, we have found archaeological sites, 3 different types of geologically significant alluvium, a desert willow wash, and also 1 species of cactus, Corypanthus, which is rare to Sierra County, usually only found south of the border in Sonora. And this is without any active inventory. As you know, right across the street from us is the school. And those children, as part of their heritage, need to know where they live in the Chihuahuan Desert and the rich ecosystems that exist here, and the processes of living things around them. I think it's an ideal opportunity to create an educational preserve for use by the schools and for the wider community. Some of you may have been to the Arizona Sonora Desert Museum in Tucson. I think there's a potential for something like that here, ultimately. The Chihuahuan Desert that you have here is a treasure, as are the healing waters, but perhaps an unrecognized treasure. We're concerned when we hear about impacts that don't belong in the city limits being taken out into open desert. Well, the open desert is a great resource too, and needs to be looked upon that way. So there's a great opportunity there, and we'd like to work with the city and any interested groups to see what can be done on that. The land is in private ownership, and of course the private owners would have to be, the land would have to be purchased, so there would be a fundraising issue. The time we've lived in Albuquerque, we've managed to lead the effort for the 7,200-acre Petroglyph National Monument. The president gave me 1 of 2 pens he used to sign the bill, and when we lived in California, we led the effort to create a 1,500-acre city wilderness park, which was the 2nd largest park in California.
Thank you very much.
So, thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Thank you for your time. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Sharon Eastfold, and I'm the counterpart, maybe the better part of the Eastfold family, but I would like to second my husband's opinions about the Chihuahuan Desert. It's one of the reasons why we moved here was this beautiful, vast expanse of open space and wilderness surrounding our home. And the other thing that I was interested in was your pool. I swim, and I've got arthritis, and swimming as we get older is one of the best forms of exercise for older people. And I understand the average population here is 55 or older, so keeping facilities like that open to the public are crucial for your aging population here. So whatever it takes to keep that pool open, I'd support that. We live up there across from the healthcare facility, Sierra Vista, and one of the things that we've noticed, and there's a school, Truth or Consequences elementary school is just down the way, and one of the things we've noticed is that not a single person who drives there follows the speed limit sign. And now we've got these multi-ton trucks hauling dirt from the hospital back and forth. So you got school buses, trucks, you got parent traffic, and I just think it's something waiting to happen. And we call that curve down Silver Dead Man's Curve, because it's a blind curve and a blind hill. It's a really, it's a potential hazard. The other thing is that there are no sidewalks for the children or for the elderly. And there's one adorable old man who's got his motorized wheelchair, and he's coming down on the street to the hospital and then back again. He had his little umbrella up yesterday. And my heart's in my throat when I see him with all this traffic going around. So I would hope, as you look at your street and potholes issue, that you also think about some sidewalks that help people get from the neighborhoods to those schools and that facility to the hospital. I would just like to take a few seconds to reiterate the value that Truth or Consequences has in its open space around here. So as you look to relocate loud explosion things or other infrastructure, please don't consider the desert your dumping ground. We've been hauling all kinds of trash off that mesa, and it is a beautiful, delicate environment that's worth investigating and worth teaching your children about. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to address the commission? Dan?
Morning, Commissioners. Ron Fenn, 316 North Foch. A couple of items. Mr. Frankel, I want to thank you for your comment or your response to my comment of last week. However, that was not directed at you. You were doing exactly what I would expect you to be doing, paying your own way. This was directed at those who are taking money from my fellow citizens and I for their own personal use. That needs to stop. Secondly, I want to talk about G1, the discussion action funding mechanism for streets and potholes. Mr. Green, I did a little checking here, and it seems that in the last 10 years of your tenure, the city has spent $8,212,000 with the street department. I would like to know exactly how much street work that entailed. That seems to me that a big figure for pothole repair. And on a more general basis, I think one of the problems in this town is that we have in our midst an elephant that needs to be dealt with. How do you eat an elephant with a spoon? It takes a lot of planning. It takes a lot of thought and consideration. Can be done. But this community, unfortunately, doesn't have anyone with the concept of, well, let's see, if we take a little knife and we do some preservation and we do some storage and pickling and drying, we can have food for the future from that elephant. Instead, we look at it until it decays, and then we have to dig a hole and bury it. Our management in this city approaches such elephants with a loan application in one hand and a begging bowl in the other, and that's supposed to resolve the problem. That is not going to resolve the problems of this community. Critical thinking, some long-range planning, and some action, not at the cost of borrowing money and paying a premium for that money. The money that we're proposing to spend on a police station, for instance, is about $20,000, $30,000 a month. Why not put that into some water line and sewer line and electric utility replacement? Oh, it's just a little bit. We want to do the whole thing at once. That's not logical thinking, because what happens if you do it all at once? In 30 years, do it again.
Thank you, Mr. Fenn. Anyone else like to, Mr. Ritter?
Good morning, Commissioners. Charles Ritter, 618 Charles. Commissioners, I would like to address F2, I believe, and H3. I believe the title of what is being attempted is misdirected. I thought that was in regard to the impact fees, and now it's at the PUAB, and those are two different boards. But more importantly, should that not be applicable to all boards if there is such a attempt to basically restrict? And I think when it goes to the public hearing, I think you will hear from me again, because I believe it needs to be separate. It cannot be just a blanket decision. People that have a conflict of interest may very well have elements that can be discussed and should be discussed for the benefit of the public, and that should not be discarded. Now, I certainly agree that if there is a true conflict of interest, that the individual or individuals should not vote on that subject and should declare that one. But discussion of the subject is in the public's interest and should be allowed under certain circumstances, and that needs to be delineated in that ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Yes, Randall Lawson, 701 Poplar Street. I've been a resident here for going on, 17 years, I guess. My wife and I own a house there at 701 Poplar, and we're not planning on leaving it anytime soon, but at 700 Locust Street, when you got an idiot that wouldn't not pay his $4,000 utility bill, runs his generators for 24 damn hours a day, got trash piled up in the yard, and he can't have water, so I don't know what he uses for toilet facilities. Now, if I'm in the house, I can't hear a thing. But if I'm outside, I can't enjoy the outdoors. That's why I'm here in Tier C. I'm here for the peace and the quiet, not listening to some generator going 24 hours a day. So I don't know if you're doing anything about that, but something better be done soon. But that's not the only problem. Half a block away, 613 Locust. Double-wide trailer. It's been used as a rental property. It's been boarded up for 6 months. I went down there at the very first when they moved out, and I talked to the code enforcement. They said, well, they've got 2 months to clean it up. But the people that own it give it back to the bank. Well, I said, well, I don't care who has it. You've got 2 months. You clean it up. Well, it was cleaned up, but then all the windows are boarded up, and they're still boarded up to this day. And now I have to go to the police department to make a complaint, which I've heard nothing about yet. But anyway, my last and final statement is the pool. It looks as if our money for the resurfacing has disappeared. Either this thing gets done, and if you remember, Mr. Fuentes, when you and I had our discussion with as far as the pool cover, I told you that I could be your biggest supporter or I could be your worst nightmare. If this pool closes, you believe me, I promise you, I will be all of your worst nightmare. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yes.
On that note, Beverly Tierfloat, 170 Juniper. It's such a delight to be before you again, and I can guarantee it will pretty much always be about Parks and Recreation, because I believe it's such a critical asset to any community for a variety of reasons: health, lowering crime rates, a number of things. I did a little research last night. I swim at the pool 3 to 5 times a week. If I had to choose between the tennis court and the swimming pool, I might even choose the swimming pool. But anyway, I have a few statistics for you. Drowning is the second leading cause of death among children under 17. And lower income children are at twice the rate of drowning. And we obviously live in a community that has a lot of low income families and children. So they're at higher risk, which is why it is so critical for a community like ours to have a pool and be teaching not only children but adults how to swim. You know, the first idea of public recreation was established in the Sand Gardens in Boston in 1885, and the first playgrounds in 1906. And the WPA, between the years of 1930 to 1940, began establishing the importance of pools, not only in cities but rural areas. And I think that this establishes a precedence about how much of a gem it is and how much of an importance it is to a community. In addition to all of these things, you know, as was said before, we live in a community where we have a lot of seniors who are unable to do any other type of, you know, recreation. I personally know of 3 people who, the last time the pool was closed for an extended period of time, sold their homes and moved out of this community. And I am not alone in stating that there are many others who feel this exact same way. And this is not just an idle conversation. I also did some research about how much it impacts real estate sales and prices positively or negatively if they have community resources, pools being at the top of the list. So when you make this decision about losing money and not having it for resurfacing the pool, I think you need to think about the economic impact to the community as well. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else? Ms. Wheeler? Whoops.
Carol Wheeler, Corbett Street, Truth or Consequences, on behalf of the Off-Leash Dog Park Project. Commissioners, Mayor Green, Manager Fuentes, Attorney Rubin, Chief, let me read this paragraph from PetSafe. Congratulations on behalf of PetSafe. It is our pleasure to inform you that Truth or Consequences New Mexico has been selected as a 2017 Bark for Your Park grant recipient. Your community will receive an award in the amount of $10,000. And this grant has been the result of the very beginning of POW, so I want everyone in the community that signed petitions, the city that's put up with me for however long, I didn't know we were going to live this long, and the chief listening to me, we did it, and the action plan that I submitted last week has already been revised. Several items have been removed, and I submitted to PetSafe a new timeline action plan, which they actually requested, and I just happen to have it there. So anyhow, thank you all for all your support. Thank the Recreation Advisory Board for their support, and Linda DiMarino, my angel, that's been helping me make my reports into a wonderfully soft and gentle grant request. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak?
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay, my name is Connie Sue Lawson. I live at 701 Poplar here in Tiersey. So I'm here to speak some on the behalf of the city swimming pool. I have a letter by one of the participants, the aerobics lady, that she asked me to please read. Her name is Alice Hutchkins. She lives at 408 North Magnolia. She starts saying, when I moved here about a year ago, the city pool was my first area of connection. It was open early in the morning. There were several excellent water aerobic classes to choose from, and it was inexpensive. I quickly made it a part of my daily schedule and found many lasting friends there. I also had just gone through extensive knee surgery a few months before, and the water therapy made a huge difference in my recovery. Over the last year, I realized my experience was not unique. Patrons of the pool call each other by name, making space for each other as they swim laps or do strengthening exercises in the deep end. Many people there are only able to exercise in the pool due to physical limitations. It is fun to go in the afternoon and see the children of the city relaxing and cooling off. The pool managers have done a great and good job of offering reduced price Saturdays and discounts for seniors, making the pool available to all, regardless of income. It saddens me to hear of all the controversy over the management and upkeep of the pool. I felt very discouraged when a new full-time manager was not hired after Destiny Mitchell left. A valuable resource like a city pool needs the commitment of city leaders for its maintenance and funding. It is unique quality of life assets that greatly enhances the life of our most valuable citizens, the elderly and the children and the infirm. I encourage you to find the money to maintain the pool and the wherewith all to make the hiring of a pool manager a priority. I, for one, will continue to regularly use the pool and support the Friends of the Pool in any way possible, hoping my doing so will be an encouragement to do the same. Thank you, Alice Hutchins. Leave this here for y'all to look. And the only thing that I really have to say is that I totally agree with her, because there's so many of our older people that need the pool. And so I hope that hopefully you'll find the money to resurface or whatever we can do to keep it going where it passes inspection. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Good morning. My name is Susie Bueller. My address is 303 Main and Lower Cochillo Creek, 29 Pistachio Drive. And I would like to address three things rather quickly. I did experience the explosions out where I am, and it made my horses run around, and it was frightening. That's all I have to say about that. And also, I would like to throw in a big pitch for the pool. It is a gem, as Beverly stated, and I've met so many people there that have come to our hotels and are staying here that come to swim at our pool. And we need to keep that pool. I implore you. And I didn't also say, I didn't address you, so I'll do that now. Honorable Mayor, thank you. And Commissioners, thank you. And please keep our pool. And then I had one other thing to say, and I can't remember it now. Another time.
Fortunately, there was always another time. Linda?
Thank you, Mayor Green, Commissioners. I'm Linda DiMarino, 618 Lincoln, and two things real quick come to mind, and it's really kind of a tie-in with the potholes and the pool. I read last week in the newspaper we just sent out 40 relocation packages. The Virgin Galactic people are going to be looking for places to live, and we have to have a place that has the amenities that they're looking for, and we have to have our best foot forward, because if they're coming to town to check it out and they don't have places to swim and exercise, I mean, we have a lot of like great outdoor activities, but we don't have a lot of exercise, fitness options, like formal fitness options in town. So I think it would be a huge detriment to not have the pool, and tying those things in, we really need to have our act together if we're looking to attract more people. Thank you.
We will. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Kathy Rosenquist, and I've lived here 2 years. I own a home at 811 East Fifth Avenue here in TRC. I lived in the Michigan area and the Chicago area, actually half of my life each place. But when I came here, it was a very spiritual feeling from when I first came here. And then I started thinking about buying a house here. And before I bought the house, of course, I went online and I did a lot of checking. The prices were really wonderful in the homes here. The taxes were good. But one of the biggest reasons that I bought here, I'm 70 years old, is you have a swimming pool. And this particular pool is larger than an Olympic pool. And if Truth or Consequences ever had to, say, build that pool from scratch, they could not afford it. Well, this community, which was also called Hot Springs, is very much a place for tourists to come and to use the hot springs and to use the pool and to increase the value of the town itself. It would be such a mistake to take that extremely expensive pool that was built years ago and let it go. It would be a very big mistake on the part of Truth or Consequences. We need that pool very much. We need it for the senior citizens. The people here, the average age, you already know, is between 54 and 56. We need it for the children in the summertime who couldn't have anything if they couldn't have those 2 free days a month to go swimming. They would have nothing. We need the pool. Please resurface it or do anything you can to fix it up. What will happen if that isn't done, I am afraid you're going to have a lot of people that will sell their homes. And these are people you want here. These are people you want here. Thank you a lot for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else? Chief? Yes, sir.
Good morning, Mayor Pro Tem, Commissioners. I just want to address one thing, and rightfully so. Sir, I'm sorry, I don't recall your name. Yes, sir. I just want to say we're aware of the circumstances at the location that the gentleman spoke about. Like one of the problems that we face in code enforcement, which is now under the umbrella of the police department as of July 1st, is a lot of these homes are rentals and the owners live out of state. And as far as the process, we've gone to the house.
Chief, excuse me, Beverly, could we please not have cross conversations when someone else is speaking?
But we've also reached out to the owners. I'm going to give you my card. Please come and see me so I can bring you up to speed on what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Anyone else like to address the commission?
Honorable Mayor and Commissioners, my name is Melanie Anderson, and I am in the new Tourism and Event Coordinator here in TRC and City of TRC. I'm looking forward to working with the city and working with the people of TRC to promote it. My background is in marketing and advertising, and also I own a resort currently in Wisconsin, and so I also have a tourism background. I came to Truth or Consequences for Snowbird, but I also really enjoy the pool as well. So my fellow poolmates, I also believe in the pool. Just wanted to introduce myself and let you know who I am. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to address? Okay, thank you. The next item on the agenda is response to public comments. Would anyone like to manage a few tests?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Commissioners, for the members of the public, I do want to address specifically regards to the pool, because I was a little bit kind of surprised with some of the comments made about, to me, it seemed like there's some misinformation out there that the pool is being considered for closure or something. I want to assure you that that is not the case. There has been no discussion about closing the pool. At least, now, over the last couple of months or weeks, I used to get a lot of calls and complaints about things, the operations of the pool. Now I don't seem to get any complaints. So I'm hoping that, knock on wood, things are getting better. I did ask Don Armijo to be here present to hear some of these comments, because when I heard they're going to be talking about the pool, I'm like, well, what's the issues with the pool? So it seems to me there's maybe some misinformation out there about the pool. I did want to address Mr. Lawson about the money. There was never any money allocated specifically for resurfacing. There has always been talk about what it would cost and does it make it on the budget, and it has not made it on the budget. Now, if there's any potential information from the state, I can tell you that Don Armijo will be made aware, I will be made aware of, and obviously we'll make the commissioners aware of that. So right now, as far as the information that I have, the pool is operating how it should be operating. It has been permitted by the state, so things are moving along. There has been no discussion nor intent about closing the pool or doing anything else. The project that you all referenced about the school, there was an original feasibility study talked about with the school, but that didn't go anywhere. So the school is moving forward with their fitness center, but the city's not doing anything in regards to a new pool out there or anything like that. I mean, it still stays where it is, and like I said, it's being funded, the operations with the funding that is available. Now, I do want to invite the public, because part of the process for funding capital projects, and this is considered a big capital project, is through the ICIP process, the Infrastructure Capital Improvement Plan, which is on our agenda later on today, and I know Tracy Burnett is working on that. And the purpose of that list is to identify projects that the community have a high interest in, the staff, as well as the commissioners. So we start prioritizing these projects and say, okay, what's the main priority for these projects? Over the course of the last couple of years, infrastructure has been at the top of the list. So that's why we've been pushing forward with a lot of funding agencies that specifically fund infrastructure. So it is on the agenda, and I welcome you all. If that is still something that, again, that's the reason for that, so that we can hear if it's going to get on the higher priority list. Because I can tell you, and I know the commissioners, that's one of the reasons why the mayor had put the issue of street paving and potholes on the list, on the agenda, because, well, pool is a high priority. It's a quality of life project, and we agree and we understand that. We also have on the other segments of the community that say, pave the streets. We have other sections that say, why are our water lines being broken so much? So that's the reason for this list, as well as to kind of give us that direction and that guidance of what do we go after as number one priority. But again, I just want to dispel any misinformation on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any response from any commissioner? Okay, Commissioner Clark, could you hear some of the public comments? Do you have anything that you want to respond to? We might have lost her. I have a couple of response. Sorry. Number one, Ms. Anderson, welcome. Welcome aboard, and we wish you success. Your success will be everyone's success, so congratulations getting the job. Carol and Linda, great job, $10,000, that's not to be sneezed at. Keep on writing those grants. Mr. and Mrs. Eastfold, welcome to Truth or Consequences. Before we moved to town, my wife and I lived on a national wildlife refuge called Bosque del Apache for 5 years as full-time resident volunteers. You can get my contact information at City Hall. We're also in the phone book. Steve and Paula Green, please give me a call. I'd love to talk to you about that. We do birding events down here during the Festival of the Cranes, put people in our hotels here. I was a board member for 10 years when we lived on the refuge, so please reach out to me. I love your enthusiasm. And again, welcome to the town. And I do support Manager Fuentes' position that I was absolutely amazed that I did not have one email that I saw come into City Hall or one phone call about issues at the pool. And I'm not going to speak for my fellow commissioners. I don't have that authority. But I will tell you, for me personally, that pool is an asset that keeps people here and attracts people to our community. It is a quality of life issue, and as I've said before, you cannot turn a profit on everything and every service that you do. But if you don't do it, you will lose population, and then you're going to have a hard time making payroll and continuing with the services. So I would appreciate you to stay here. We will have that ICIP, which basically the commission, working with the manager, prioritizes what we envision of the needs of our community. This is the second time this has been brought before us. We had some public input 2 weeks ago at our meeting. I believe this must be done by September 1, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct, sir?
Yes.
So this is the opportunity for us. We have heard, and now you'll see where that goes. The next item on the agenda is E, consent calendar, which consists of City Commission regular minutes of July 26, 2017, and the City Commission PUAB joint workshop minutes of June 28, 2017. I need a motion for acceptance.
Mr. Mayor, I so move.
I have a motion. I have a second by Commissioner Heschler. Thank you. I saw you twiddling your pinky there. I thought that was the second. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Carries unanimous. Thank you. Carries unanimously. Commissioner Clark, we had lost you previously, and I had asked if there was any of the public comment that you wanted to respond to, but since we've got...
I did hear that, so just one comment.
Yes, go ahead.
It's okay. Just to back up Manager Fuente's comment, it was myself and ex-Commissioner Richter that were looking at building a new swimming pool because of the condition of our pool and what the health department was saying. But, very honestly, we were looking at 70,000, but it was growing to about 110,000, 120,000 to resurface the pool, and that we were given a permit to operate again means that the health department is working with the city also, and that none of us that I can remember being in this concept of putting a new pool up with the school issue using some of their money, none of us were ever considering not having a pool. It was, what would the option be if we built a new pool as trying to keep our old pool open? So, like Manager Fuente says, we have absolutely zero intention of shutting this pool down. It's just what are the better options? And thank you for your comment, Manager Fuente.
Thank you, Commissioner. You're entirely welcome. Thank you, Commissioner Clark, and I apologize for taking this out of context, but I felt it was important that if Commissioner Clark wanted to respond to something, that she had that opportunity. The next item...
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, I would like for the record to show that although I moved to approve the consent calendar, I was not at the July 26th meeting, but I was able to listen to it on the radio, and I did read the minutes, and therefore I feel that I am able to make that motion.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Seeing no further comment, then we will move to F, Ordinance, Resolutions, and Zoning. Number 1, discussion action. Ordinance number 686 for publication, authorizing issuance and sale of up to $2,500,000 City of Truth or Consequences municipal gross receipts tax revenue bonds for the purpose of constructing, purchasing, furnishing, equipping, rehabilitating, making additions to, or making improvements to a law enforcement facility, or purchasing or improving any ground related thereto, including but not necessarily limited to acquiring and improving parking lots or any combination of foregoing. Manager Fuentes will present this item.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I would like to introduce Linda Melendez, who's also from Melendez & Melendez Law Firm, who is assisting George K. Baum and New Mexico Finance Authority on this process of the funding for this project. So I'll turn it over to her.
Thank you very much,
Manager Fuentes. Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. Like Mr. Fuentes said, I am Linda Melendres, and I'm serving as bond counsel for the city, working with George K. Baum, who is doing a lot of the financials with the New Mexico Finance Authority. And what we're looking at today is the proposed ordinance. So today, what you have in front of you is a red line draft of what we're looking to adopt on the next regular meeting. I believe it's September 13th.
That's correct.
So if you approve today, we would publish in the newspaper and allow that to go forward. And then you would have the loan agreement and the intercept agreement and the finalized ordinance. It's pretty much going to be exactly what you have in front of you, but as you see, there are a few changes, and we put it in red lines so that it would be easy to show you the minor the minor changes that were made to that ordinance. Just as a little bit of a background, again, this is the first reading of that ordinance, and what it is it's to allow the city to authorize the receipt of those funds in order to construct the law enforcement facility. Now, you know, what we're doing right now is just the first preliminary step. However, what we have received from the New Mexico Finance Authority, it looks as though there's going to be a proposed principal amount of $2.196 million, and the interest rate is going to be about a 2.4% interest rate. The scheduled closing date for the loan would be October 27th, and the revenues that the city is pledging to pay the interest and principal is the 1/4 of 1% of the municipal gross receipts tax. Again, we'll be once the loan agreement and the intercept agreement is in a little bit better shape, we'll be providing that to you so you can review that as well as the ordinance again prior to the meeting on the 13th. But if you have any questions regarding the specifics of the ordinance, it really just goes through the terms of what you guys are agreeing to, and the loan agreement would then give more specific terms regarding the loan and the payback schedule. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to go through anything with you.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, and just for additional clarification information in the for the benefit of the public and the commission, the dedicated GRT for this project is the same GRT that was previously dedicated for the police department. It's specifically for public safety, no other purpose. So we're taking a little bit of that GRT and using it to pay down this debt. So that's what it would, that's the revenue source that it's coming from, that currently is dedicated for the police department. And one of the other questions that I was asked was that, you know, this is a loan, correct? But it does mention uses the word bond. But I just for clarification, the process that NMFA follows, can you explain to the commission public, you know, the word bond, how does that plays in to this whole process of the loan?
Sure, no problem. So there's two different ways to get the money. And what we've decided the best way is a loan through the NMFA. So NMFA has a project revolving fund where it has already issued bonds, and it may issue more bonds to fulfill that fund. And so instead of the city then issuing its own bonds, what it's doing is it's getting money from those bond proceeds that NMFA has already acquired, and then we would pay back, well, as I say, the city, and basically with the intercept agreement, the state would direct that GRT money back to NMFA directly to pay off, and basically it's just that fund. So bond and loan, it's basically an evidence of indebtedness. So we're asking money to be directed into the city, and we're going to be paying that money back over time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any concerns or questions from the commission?
Yes.
Commissioner Clark?
Okay, so we've got put into this ordinance, yeah, thank you, Manager Fuentes, for clarifying that bond and also for the input. That's a concern that I had, because that's what our last meeting we were talking about. The City of Truth and Consequences does not have a bond rating, and we are not putting out a bond for this funding, and that we are actually going loan and intercept on this, and that the funding already exists. is my understanding, and that the par amount that we're going for is $2,185,000. So the question is, how did we get to 2.5? Is that for cost overrun? Because we certainly aren't going to need the money if we've already got this 0.25% for principal and interest that's already been calculated. That's one question. The second question is the true interest cost that was presented to us last meeting was $193. I just heard 2 point something, and what effect does that have on the annual debt service? And the other question is, in this ordinance that we would be putting out to publication, would it not be a good idea to reference the GRT that we're picking up from and for public safety in that ordinance, because it seems very vague that this could basically come from any part of the monies that are to be returned to the Trees of Consequences municipality. And when we're having an intercept, we may want to make certain that it's being intercepted on the proper percentage and what we voted for in 2011, I believe. How's that?
Sure, no problem. Commissioner Clark, I'll respond to each of your questions. The ordinance right now is the proposed ordinance, and what we've done is we put up to $2.5 million, and the reason we did this is that was what the board had approved back when they approved it earlier this year. We went to the New Mexico Finance Authority and we received a number. There's been, again, the loan documents that I'm looking at are several weeks old, and so what I have, which is the 2.19, may be revised. I don't have the most current numbers, and the New Mexico Finance Authority is going to be revising those documents. So prior to the next meeting and prior to your adoption, we will have both the exact number for the principal amount of the loan and the true interest cost. Unfortunately, Mark Valenzuela from George K. Baum was not here today, and I'm not the person to talk about true interest costs, unfortunately. So the term sheet that I've been looking at, again, is several weeks old, and we're going to be getting the commissioner's loan agreement and an intercept agreement that is updated and has the exact numbers prior to the next meeting for your review. Regarding the ordinance and the summary of it, I'm happy to include a mention that that 0.25 is going to be coming from the public safety portion of the GRT. I have no problem making those changes, and I will work with Manager Fuentes to make those changes if that's what the board would like.
Thank you. So the only question or the concern that I have is that the City Commission at the last meeting approved to go through the NMFA based on what was presented to us, and if we're going to go to 2.5 million, are we going to need to revisit the motion that we've made and remove that and put a new one in place?
So I apologize. Again, maybe I wasn't clear. The 2.5 million is not what the loan is going to be. It is not to exceed and up to 2.5 million, and that was just to ensure that we had in the ordinance enough that we knew that the actual principal amount would be covered within it. Again, the finalized ordinance will be given and will be given to the board, and they will be allowed to review it, and that will have the exact number of the principal amount. So right now I believe it's at 2.1, but I need to get that final number from the New Mexico Finance Authority prior to the final ordinance that will be adopted in September.
And if I may, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, Commissioner Clark, and you are correct, the Commissioners already kind of gave the procedure to go ahead with a $2 million loan for the project. Now, as you are aware, there are some fees that add up to the 2.1, but there is no, we're not going after a $2.2 million project or $2.4 million project. This is still a $2 million loan and all those fees. So it is standard to draft some of these ordinances to say up to, but it doesn't necessarily mean that that's what we're getting, because as you stated, the commission already authorized the 2 million, but all of those other fees take it over the 2 million. That's why it says up to 2.5, but we're not going after the full 2.5.
Okay, so do we need to do any clarification, since we already made the motion and approved one thing, and we might be having to do something different with the way this ordinance is going to be just out to the public?
Mr. Mayor and Commissioner Clark, I think when that actual ordinance comes back in the final terms, it will have that information that the commissioners have previously seen, and that's what will be the terms and the amount that will be voted on. Right now, it's just the general ordinance to take us to that next step of developing, formalizing all of the numbers and agreements.
Correct.
Okay. All right. I'm still a little vague on it, but thank you for trying to do this one. It would be easier, I think, if I did be there personally, but I apologize for that. Those are some concerns, and thank you for offering to change the ordinance to put in that this is dedicated to public safety money, instead of just vague that it could be used from all sorts of other places too.
No problem.
Okay. Any other questions or concerns? I just want to, I've had a couple phone calls because there has been, I'm glad Manager Fuentes explained it. You explained it, Commissioner Clark questioned and explained it. This is not a new 0.25% increase on GRT. Not this commission, but a commission that I sat on back in 2011 voted because we were a training ground for police officers. They were coming in, being trained, and then they went someplace else, unfortunately, or fortunately for them, a much higher salary. So we voted, and it started and went into effect January 1st, 2012, 0.25% for the police department to use at their discretion to build a solid constituency of a team that would serve the population and the citizens of Truth or Consequences, and that we did not become a training ground. And it was up to the police chief working with his team to determine how best to use that 0.25%, which has been embedded in their budget for the last 5 years, starting in 2012. And working with his team, the chief has deemed it necessary and money well spent for our growth, and what a better facility and a bigger facility will allow the police department to serve other needs of this community that we don't have the physical space to do right now. That money is there. And as Manager Fuentes said, we cannot take that money out of the police department and fix potholes. It is dedicated funds for public safety. So I just want to clarify that one more time, and I appreciate Commissioner Clark bringing it up, that it is dedicated money from an existing budget that has been in that budget for the last 5 years. And the chief has assured us, as the numbers have been presented to us by Mark and now yourself, we did hear, and Commissioner Clark is right, we did hear the 1.9%, but there would still be enough money left over from that 0.25% to pay down the loan and still give the department flexibility to use additional money of that money, because that 1% probably is around $250,000, it's about $240,000. And you're talking about 1.9%. If you do the math, there's still a nice chunk left over for the police department to work with. So I just wanted to clarify that, and I thank Manager Fuentes and Commissioner Clark for bringing it up again. Any further questions before I stand for a motion? Hearing none, I will accept the motion, please, to go to publication.
Mayor, I would make that motion, but I would ask that there be an addition addition to the ordinance that specifies that this is the public safety money.
From the police department's budget.
Correct.
Right. Okay. So, would you then make a motion for ordinance number 686 to go to publication with the addition of the source of the money being the 1/4% that has been allocated towards the police department to use at their discretion? Is that?
I believe that the exact wording is for public safety.
Okay.
Is that correct, Manager Fuentes?
That is correct.
Okay, for public safety. So would that be your motion then?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I have a motion by Commissioner Clark. I need a second. Second by Commissioner Frankel. Is there any further discussion or concern? Again, this is for publication and publication only. Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you, it carries unanimously. The next item is number 2, ordinance number 687 for publication, adding section 2/276, providing a procedure for the recusal of Public Utility Advisory Board members. Mr. Rubin.
Yes, good morning, everybody. As a matter of procedure, let me just say at the outset that this item on the agenda deals with amending an ordinance pertaining to the Public Utility Advisory Board for the possible recusal of board members. As we look further down the agenda on item H3, that will call for the possible amendment to the City Commission Rules of Procedure related to recusals. And when we compare the text that I prepared for both F2 and H3, you're going to see that they're identical. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to give you a discussion here that basically encompasses both items on the agenda, just as a matter of time saving here. Interestingly, as we get ready for the City Commission meetings, I am frequently asked, so I'll get contacted by maybe a City Commission member or maybe a board member, and the question is, Mr. Rubin, I'm a little concerned, this item on the agenda, do I have a conflict of interest? Can I sit there on the board and can I make a decision on this? And, some of these questions, they get a little hazy, and there's, sometimes you have to use some, make a judgment call as to really whether someone has a conflict of interest or not, and then, of course, you just try and give advice. I try and give advice to that particular board member, but, occurred to me really what we really need is some clarity. So what I was trying to do here is actually come up with an ordinance that we've set forth here for the Public Utility Advisory Board. And again, as I mentioned, it's going to be the same language, proposed language for the rules of procedure for the City Commission. So that being said, the ordinance is very brief, so for the people who are listening in, I'm going to go ahead and read it aloud. And also read, of course, the body of the ordinance is section 2-276, recusal. A member of the public Utility Advisory Board shall recuse himself, herself, from participating in a particular item on the agenda when such member, 1, has a conflict of interest as described in the Government Conduct Act 10-16-1 et sequa, or 2, the totality of circumstances would create a reasonable public perception that such member cannot participate in that particular item in a fair and impartial manner. In such events, the member shall explain his/her reasoning prior to the item being discussed by the Public Utility Advisory Board. The recusing member shall then remove himself/herself from the meeting room prior to the commencement of any discussion of the particular agenda item and should not vote on such item. So let me just elaborate a little bit further. I've given 2 instances where a recusal would be appropriate. Number 1, I'm indicating the recusal would be appropriate if the person has a conflict of interest as described in the Government Conduct Act. And that is easy for me to include because we already have a state statute called the Government Conduct Act, which describes when a public official may have a conflict of interest. And it's a very long worded statute, but let me just read you one sentence, which I think really is the most important provision here. And it comes from 10-16-4A, and it reads, it is unlawful for a public officer or employee to take an official act for the primary purpose of directly enhancing the public officer's or employee's financial interest or financial position. So that's pretty obvious. So certainly if someone is looking at the agenda and they know that the action that may be taken at that meeting would affect that particular member's financial interest, it would be appropriate for the person to recuse himself. Number two, of course, is a little bit more, it took a little bit more thought for me to put together, because here I'm talking about public perception. And again, that's really a matter of, it's really a judgment call, but what I was trying to put together here is if it would appear from a reasonable person point of view that a board member would have a conflict of interest, even if the person really would not have a direct financial interest in the outcome of a particular item, but the perception would be the person cannot serve in a fair manner. And I'm throwing that in there also, the person should recuse himself. So that's basically really what we have here. There was a public comment made earlier, and I appreciate that, and let me just briefly address that. Once a board member makes the decision that he or she should recuse himself, it's appropriate for the person to leave the room. And the reason why I'm suggesting that is because if the board member was to stay in the room and even participate in discussion, the perception again is then created that particular board member may be trying to influence the other board members. So that's why, just to remove all problems of public perception, all problems of an improper public perception, I'm suggesting the person should just leave the room. And that's what we've been doing, and I think it's worked well. Finally, as pointed out, yes, this is actually, the ordinance we're talking about is directed towards the Public Utility Advisory Board, and I discussed with management, and I think the plan is that if this passes and we go through the final adoption and it works, and we get this as a final, as a filing on the books, then I believe then the plan would be actually to extend this to other boards. So that is our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the commission on this matter?
Yes.
Commissioner Clark.
Attorney Rubin, I have a couple of questions on this one. My understanding is, I love going into the parking lot. So that being said, there are a couple of things that I've looked at. One is, New Mexico just says you can, if you're a legislator, you can just say, well, I've got a conflict of interest and this is what it is. And you don't need to remove yourself from the room. But I think that it's very fair that we do remove ourselves from the room. That it's very unclear a couple of things. One, that it is a financial interest, is whether it's for or against you, if there's going to be a personal financial issue, that's one of them, and or if whatever decision somebody would make, whether it's a board or a commissioner, would affect an immediate family member. That those are the two main reasons why someone would want to recuse themselves and absolve themselves from the room. That being said, also, this is just talking about the Public Utility Advisory Board. Why are we just going with that particular board, and why are we not suggesting to every board that if they have a personal issue, a personal gain, that they might want to step away from that particular issue, whichever board they may be on?
And I don't disagree with you, and I did discuss with the management. I guess the preference was, and what I was asked to do, is actually just put this together for one board, and if it passed, then I suppose I'll be requested or instructed, I guess, to do this for all the other boards. Mr. Fuentes, I mean, try to put words in your mouth. That's my understanding is what you're asking me to do.
And Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, and that is correct. I think this was, if the commission agrees with the language that's being proposed by Attorney Rubin, again, we can either proceed forward with the proposed ordinance for publication, or the commission can instruct staff to go ahead and amend every single board and come back with a more ordinance that puts this language on every single board. Again, but the intent is, what is the will of the commission in regards to this type of language in each of these boards for recusal when there is a potential conflict of interest?
So Manager Fuentes, thank you for that. Back to my comment is that always like, a thought process, and I know that several commissioners have recused themselves from different issues. And we do talk to the lawyer to get their recommendation or whatever, but the two main issues are, is it a financial conflict or a personal conflict? And I think that this could actually carry all the way to even the city commission, to make it very clear that, if you have one of those two conflicts, please just extend a courtesy to the rest of the public and the rest of the people on the planet to remove yourselves from the discussion and not even be available. So I would kind of object to just taking on the PUAB board at this particular moment and not having it really clear what we would be looking for, including looking at ourselves also.
And Mr. Mayor, Commissioner Clark, it will be the next item on the agenda, actually under H3, that the same language is being proposed under the Commissioner's Rules of Procedure. So the same language would apply to the City Commission.
And Commissioner Clark, if I may, during the agenda meeting of yesterday with Manager Fuentes and Attorney Rubin, it was decided basically as a cost-saving mechanism, because we did not know how the commission is going to vote on this, rather than authorizing Attorney Rubin to spend our money, taxpayers' dollars, on something that we did not know what the will of the commission was going to be. We decided, since I had put this on the agenda 2 agendas ago, I believe, 2 meetings ago, because of the minutes that I had read from the PUAB, where advice was given by counsel, and one of the members refused to basically even leave the room and refused to not participate in a conversation that one could very easily say that attempted to poison the well. So that's why we brought this forward, and I think it was just a question of why spend all the time and energy. Let's see what happens with the same verbiage on the PUAB and on the City Commission, and then if the Commission votes in favor of this, then we could authorize staff to move ahead with every one of our boards. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Because I know you're big on legal
It's an
fees.
excellent idea.
Okay.
But, I also think it's a courtesy that, if we're going to ask another board to recuse themselves, we need to follow the same direction, and it's meant to have it extremely clear.
Yeah, Commissioner Clark, that is under H3 amendment to the City Commission.
I'm looking for it right now, yeah.
Yeah, rules of procedure. So it's the same verbiage. Okay.
All right. Thank you for your time.
Oh, thank you for yours. Any further discussion, points made, comments? Okay. Hearing none, I will stand for a motion, please, for publication. Commissioner Heschler, I saw you take a big deep breath. Was that a sigh, or did you want to make the motion? Otherwise, I'll make the motion.
Mayor, I would like to make the motion that this commission approve ordinance number 687 for publication, adding section 2-276, providing a procedure for the recusal of Public Utility Advisory Board members.
I second that motion.
Thank you. I have a motion by Commissioner Heschler and a second by Mayor Pro Tem Whitehead. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Carries 4-1. Thank you very much. The next item is discussion action resolution number 0617/18, adopting the infrastructure capital improvement plan, for abbreviation purposes, ICIP, for the fiscal year 2019 through 2023. And Tracy Burnett, our grants projects coordinator, will be presenting this item.
Good morning, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and Commissioners. August 9th at the public hearing, and attached also in your agenda is a draft ICIP priority list. At today's meeting, the City Commission can add, amend, or delete projects from this list that's provided, and then we must rank the projects for each fiscal year with 2019, beginning with 2019 and ending in 2023, and then the list must be adopted by City Commission. So we'll be asking for approval of the resolution with the approved list by the commission. It's important to note that the ranking order is not as important as having items listed on the ICIP. In the past, the city has received funds for projects that are listed lower on the list. We have met with staff. Electric has reviewed the items that are on the list for them and still stand by those items. Water has 2 additional items that they would like to see possibly on there, and that would be our Morgan booster station, specifically replacing the booster pumps and pump setup replacement. And then, of course, water lines, which we also heard from the public as well. I spoke with the water department, and they have some suggestions, since we do have to be more specific on areas, and they do have some suggestions of some priority streets as well. I think their top 4 was the Pershing, 2nd Street, Veeder, and Marshall, and those are listed in our AMP, our asset management plan, as some of our higher priority. And then, as we heard with the public, roadways and the commission as well, roadways were an issue, and Don Armijo is here as well. I'm sure he'll have an opinion on what streets, he thinks are better addressed. And then once the commission votes or approves the resolution, then I can update the ICIP data, and that has to be done by the 1st of September. So if there's no questions, I can turn it over for you guys for discussion.
Okay, thank you very much. Open for discussion, ideas. I just have a couple of questions, if I may. Just start the conversation, my fellow commissioners. Manager Fuentes, correct me where I go off the skids here. The animal shelter has been funded, is that correct?
That's correct.
Maybe I'll show you. I beg your pardon. I'll address this. So we should probably take that off the list.
We've received $451,000 total between our appropriations that we've received as well as the county. Approximate estimations are roughly $100,000 to $200,000 that could be maybe put towards equipping it, if we received it. So I don't know that it's necessarily want to remove it completely from the list, but it could stand, or there again, it's at the commission's discretion.
But I think it's important to note, Mayor, as you pointed out, that project, the construction of that project has been funded. So again, yes, as Tracy mentioned, either to remain on the list, or we could kind of move it down on the list if there's any additional equipment down the road.
And Tracy, I see also like the 4th one down, airport fuel farm storage tank replacement, and on the H1, discussion action bid award for the airport fuel farm schedule 3. Is that the same thing?
Yes, that would be the final phase of the fuel farm. I believe that we need to wait till that item gets on for the next one down to accept the contract and award, and then we'll get final word as well, whether or not we've received officially the funding for Schedule 3.
Got it. So therefore, just to cover our bases, we should keep that on the list.
If it's the will of the commission.
Okay. All right. That was my only concerns. Any commission, I mean, we did hear how important it is to a large share members of the community of all ages, tiger sharks up to my age and maybe even beyond, how important the swimming pool is to many, many, many citizens here. And I do not see that on this, unless I am missing it, I don't see that on, is it on, it's not, Mayor Pro Tem.
But I think we should add it.
Yeah, I think that should be added. Should put down the swimming pool, and I think that is.
And Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
Commissioners, I think at the second page, one of the things that Tracy mentioned that the ICIP process is requiring now is for us to be a little bit more specific. In some of these projects, as you will see, we see citywide road improvements, citywide water line replacement. I think they want us to identify that. So for example, like with the swimming pool, at the very end, you have a multi-purpose recreation complex, $2 million. Well, when we did the feasibility study, we knew it was going to be around $2 million. So I think, yes, we need to be a little bit more specific on, especially on those that are at the higher priority for the next year. And then we'll start making more and more improvements as far as the individual projects. So we could take the swimming pool as an example, plug it in there and just name it very specific. That way we can start updating this list as they are required as to do. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So what your suggestion, Manager Fuentes, would be then to put down swimming pool / resurfacing per Department of Health?
No, just say, swimming pool, but it is specifically TRC swimming pool rehab.
Right.
That is already very specific.
Got it.
And then that could be moved up off the list and so forth. So, and again, if, that's what I'm referring to.
Okay. All right.
Mr. Mayor, if I
Yes.
could chime in.
Sure,
What I
of
would like
course.
to, what my thought process is that we look at all our utility infrastructure. You know, we've got water, everybody looks around, and we've got cones everywhere. We've had lines breaking, we have utility issues. So I think that is very important to our community. I mean, we don't like to drive around it and have, see the water and the dirt everywhere. You know, we're losing lots of water, and water is our valuable resource to our community. So I would like to see that maybe we look at putting higher on the list all of our utility infrastructure. And again, the swimming pool is a vital part of our community, and we need to look at resurfacing it and maintaining and taking care of our pool so that we can use it year-round. So those are just my ideas, and then, of course, kind of drop everything else as it comes, you know.
Okay. Can you specifically, just so we can try to come up with some semblance of a list here, because we're obviously, we don't have another meeting to do this. We've got to, so can you just go down the list, Mayor Pro Tem, and pick out the ones that you feel that you have heard from the citizens that's an ongoing drumbeat, year after year after year. Why aren't you doing, et cetera, et cetera? And I think that might be a good starting place for us to try to prioritize these.
Well,
I mean,
you know, I really don't have anything particular other than just the utilities and the water lines. So, you
Okay.
know,
well, that would be water line replacement.
yeah, the water line replacement, you know, we need to look at all of that. So
Okay.
that would be what, 1, 2, 3.
I think citywide storm drain improvements, that is kind of, we're dancing around that with some grants that
Right,
Main
right.
Street has put in for that. I think that maybe the city got something, some money to take a look at that. I mean, that's an ongoing problem, and it's going to cost us a lot of money to fix, but we need to fix it.
Right, right.
You know,
And then we've got like the electrical main feeders, the upgrade. We've got the pole replacement program. You know, we need to look at replacing all our utility poles and getting that up and running properly. So those are just kind of a few
Okay.
of my ideas that I have. I mean,
Tracy, wastewater treatment plant renovation, is that all? I know it's not done,
Right.
but have we got all the money for that project?
We have received funding for everything but Phase 3. Phase 3 is not something that needs to be at the top of our list right now. It has to do with the oxidation oval and our permitting, and would come into play maybe in the future when our population is increased.
Okay.
I wouldn't suggest removing it off the
But
list,
we
but it
but
could
we
probably
could,
move
to
down.
Mayor Pro Tem's point, we could drop that down and
Correct.
and move water line replacement, storm drain improvements, and some of the things that Mayor Pro Tem is talking about. We could move them up, still keep the wastewater treatment plant renovation on the list, but drop it down because we're going to need money way, way down the road. We don't need it tomorrow.
Correct. And this is reviewed and redone annually. And looking in the past, sometimes the commission has prioritized maybe the top 5 or the top 10, and then staff has completed the remaining amount, so.
I think that's what I was going to kind of suggest, because this will be a dinner meeting if we decide to come up with every single one. Any other commissioners? Commissioner Clark, do you have any ideas, suggestions? I know Commissioner Heschler does.
My thoughts are, as I agree with Mayor Pro Tem, that we, the utilities, so we need to be able to
Okay. Commissioner Ashler, yes, sir.
Sure, just a couple of comments, and one is I do agree with Mayor Pro Tem Whitehead, water line replacement I think is an issue. These are the things that we hear most. Water line replacement comes up all the time. I think we need to make a concerted effort to try to get that done. The other thing I hear a lot of is storm drainage. You know, every time it rains, we have issues. And it seems like we forget about it in the summer months when it doesn't rain, but as soon as we hit the monsoon season or we have that storm, the drainage issues come forth, and I think we need to address that strongly. Not everything, and unfortunately the most expensive items are items that are underground that we never see, and we understand that. But I think we need a little more, we had something a little more sexy to this thing. What I mean by that is I'd like to see some things happen above ground. And some things that, if we're building for the future, something that's going to sell this community. Obviously, the pool. We've got to spend some money at that pool. If it's off the table that we're going to build a new pool, if we're not going to build a new pool, then we've got to take care of what we have and enhance what we have. And I think that would be money well spent. The sidewalks and signage for this community. I've traveled this community extensively, looking at issues all around the community. Those are some of the things I think that would add a little flair to this community and make the community look a little more attractive, a place where people want to relocate to and to be a part of. Our parks. You know, we're having a difficult time with parks. The parks seem to suffer a little bit here, whether we have enough personnel or not, or whether we can address those things. But those things provide recreation for our community. And if we're going to be a destination place where people can enjoy themselves and settle down and want to live, then they have to have their recreation. And I think those are items that we can spend that doesn't cost them a whole lot of money. Yeah, it can be expensive, but it's not like all the utilities that we have to spend underground and things of that nature. But those are some of the less expensive items that we can do that make the most immediate impact, certainly visual, and certainly quality of life. So I would vote for some of those things.
Okay. And I am not at liberty to talk about sidewalks until September. Was it September 7th, Linda? September 7th. But there is something in the wind that will make us smile. That's all. So I've been sworn to, on death, I've been sworn to secrecy at the Main Street Board meeting. Some points well made, and we'll take it. Yeah, what's out of sight is not, unfortunately, out of mind. You know, which is what underground. So if we were to take, if we were to take water line replacement, we have storm drain improvements 2 places, one downtown and one just citywide storm drain improvements. I think because downtown is a place of commerce and a lot of people visit that area. I mean, my sympathy goes out to people who have to drive through puddles to get to their house. I get it, I understand, but I think it's a question of where are we going to get the biggest, to your point, sir, visual for our money, and where will it impact our shop owners and store owners who are catering to the visiting public, our own citizens, and creating the GRT that this town runs on. So I think water lines and storm drain improvements in downtown, actually Commissioner Frankel has done that with a presentation that we're hopefully going to start maybe 5 months now or something like that, with Mr. Clothier. If we put that up there, I certainly would like to see the swimming pool up there, the resurfacing. What else did I hear? Water lines, drainage. Cook Street water treatment facility. Can you talk us about that a little bit, Tracy? That's a $2 million project.
Yeah, we have an active application on file with USDA. We have not officially heard word back. It is possible, maybe before this has to be submitted, we might hear a yes or a no. But as of right now, we do need that project funded.
Okay, that's a must. We can't kick that can down the road, so to speak.
Pardon?
We can't kick that can down the road.
No.
Okay. So that should stay up pretty high. Well, how about if we put water line replacement, if we put storm drain improvements in downtown, if we then put, Mayor Pro Tem, what was the other one you talked about? Water and something else you had mentioned
I just
infrastructure
talked about
specifically.
the electric main feeders, the upgrade, and
Okay.
the replacement of the poles.
Okay, so the electric main feeders, and maybe we can combine that with poles,
Pole replacement.
pole replacement, make that one. Put up the pool,
Mhm.
which would be number 4.
Mhm.
And then we could leave everything to the discretion of staff, knowing where we are on certain projects, where Tracy's going to, and Manager Fuentes are going to be looking for funding to complete some of these projects, what the time schedule is, and that would be the determining factor, I think, of where they would appear on the list. I mean, if we don't need money to 2022, for example, why are we putting it number 1 in 2017? It doesn't make sense, so, anyone have any heartburn with that idea? Commissioner Clark?
I'm just looking at a couple of other things. One is citywide broadband.
Okay.
And, it's not a lot of money. But I've heard a lot of complaints about not being able to get, that kind of service. So, not that I would put it up at the top where water line delivery is, but to look at it because it's not like a $47 million project. And the other thing we haven't really talked about is what's the hospital expansion, what part of the city for $1.2 million when we already have this loan to build a brand new hospital. What does that mean? And then senior citizens complex. That ended up at $6.5 million, which is that, what's the concept behind that?
Yeah. And Commissioner Clark, I think, and Manager Fuentes, tell me where I go off the rails on this, but I believe the hospital, the build-out of the new hospital, has just taken the quarter of pledged GRT that the city has voted on and re-upped that 1/4. It has just gone from the operation of the hospital. That money has been moved sideways, and now it's used as part of a pool of money to pay down the loan. We're not going to be, to the best of my knowledge, and Manager Fuentes sits on the governing board, as we all know, we're not going to be on the hook for additional monies for the build-out of the hospital. Am I correct in that, sir?
That's correct, yes.
So
So what's this 1.2 million?
And it can come off the list.
And that was my next question. Why is it on the list that we voted to take the 1/4% and move it sideways? I didn't understand. That was my next. You beat me to it, Commissioner Clark. You're absolutely right. I don't think it should be on the list. And you had another point that you wanted to make? I thought I heard.
The citywide broadband is like not a lot of money, and I think that would be advantageous for a lot of the businesses. So I think that not put it up the top of the list, but maybe we can look for $35,000. And the senior citizens complex.
Right.
That's $6.5 million. Are we talking about the senior facilities, including all of everything that is our public buildings on 3rd and 4th Street, or where does that come from?
Mr. Mayor and Commissioner Clark, please realize that some of these projects have been on this list probably for a number of years. And at some point, we certainly will have to come back and revisit, maybe a lot sooner than next year, maybe a couple of months earlier in the process, to really go through each of these projects and identify really what was the intent back then when it was added to the list, and maybe having to revisit those individual projects. And if they're no longer applicable to today, then delete them from the list, because you are correct. I have no idea of why that senior citizens complex, $6 million. I mean, I don't know if at that time they were thinking of building a whole new senior center complex or refurbishing, rehabbing. We don't have that information, that historical information for you. But as the mayor pointed out, maybe focusing on the top priority projects, and then planning for next year, starting the process way sooner and going through each of these individual projects and scrutinizing them and kind of start cleaning up this list.
That was exactly a perfect answer. You couldn't have said anything better. Because I think some of these may be archaic, or, you know, you need to update them for today's discussion. So, thank you, Manager, thank you, Mayor.
Okay, and also, Commissioner Clark, under citywide broadband, I'm going to make a stretch on this. It's listed under economic development, and certainly not only do our citizens use broadband, but our visitors, our tourists use broadband. And since you're not talking about a lot of money, we might try to float the idea by City Hall to use part of the city's portion of lodger's tax. Because I'm going to say that having good broadband is a tourist-related attraction, and that will keep people here connected. That maybe the city might take a look at that next year when we do allocations for lodger's tax, and that's where we might be able to find the $35,000. It's just an idea that I'm planting in. Manager Fuentes is, he's smiling. He's not giving us the 35 grand, but he is smiling. So.
No, I think it's a good idea, and because it is a tourist-related kind of concept, as well as local, I think it would be in everybody's best interest.
Absolutely.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, kind of a win-win. Okay, so we don't beat this pony to death here. Does anyone have any other? Tracy, have you been following this? You kind of prioritize where we're at?
Yes.
Okay, so then, last round. Okay, I would like to make a motion to authorize staff to move forward with submitting the ICIP in a timely fashion and prioritizing the items that we have discussed and put them up front and then moving everything down proportionately. However, you knowing better and with your finger on top of things, that in your judgment, if you wanted to do a little bit of juggling and to justify that to the commission, I am quite sure you will have the support of the commission. We trust you. So that's a long-winded motion, but would anyone dare to second that?
Mr. Mayor?
Commissioner Frank.
Mr. Mayor, can you please also include approving the resolution?
Yes, ma'am. I will do that. And to approve the resolution number 06-17/18, which will be the final adoption of the infrastructure capital improvement plan. And so, might I have a roll call, Madam Clerk, please?
Did I have a second for that?
I'll second that motion.
Second. I thought Josh had Mr. Time, but we have time.
Whoever. Honorable Steve Green.
Yes.
Honorable Sandra Wayhead.
Aye.
Honorable Ralph Eschler.
Yes.
Honorable Kathy Clark.
Aye.
Honorable Joshua Franco.
Yes.
Did you say
Commissioner
yea
Clark,
or
I couldn't
nay?
hear what you said.
That was kind of a choke, right?
I didn't know if you were coughing or voting. Would you, just for the record, was that a, aye, okay, thank you. Thank you. And before we go on to the next, I like what Commissioner Clark asked and the answer that Manager Fuentes gave, that maybe at some particular point down the line, we should maybe have a workshop, open it up to the public, and let's get a list that is, that speaks of the community of 2017, because some of these things that you said, I didn't know why they're here. So in the future, we should do that. Okay, thank you very much. The next item is G1, funding mechanism for streets and potholes. So, here we go. I'm going to tell you the punchline first, and then tell you how I get to the punchline. The punchline is to let the citizens decide on March, when we have the election for 2 open positions that will be open on the commission. So it will not cost us any money. Let the citizens decide if they want to authorize the staff, the government, of Truth or Consequences to issue a GO, or a general obligation, and thank you for that, Clerk Renee, I didn't know what that meant, bond. And here's my thinking behind it. Number one, I just will repeat real quickly. In the street department's budget, there is 1/8 of 1% that is dedicated for streets. It's a dedicated fund. You can't use it to clean up the swimming pool, unfortunately, or fortunately, whatever the case might be. It's dedicated. That's approximately $140,000, $140,000, $150,000. I'm going to go low because I think our GRT that spiked this year is really an unrealistic number, and it spiked because of the $29 million build-out of the Alzheimer wing at the Veterans Home. So I don't think that creates a true picture of where we are with our GRT. So I'm going to be conservative and go 140. Every year, unless they change, New Mexico NMDOT, Department of Transportation, allows communities to apply for a local government road fund, which will fix about maybe 800 feet of a street, somewhere between $60,000 to $70,000. It's a 75-25. We're on the hook for 25% of the award, and the state comes in with 75. So looking optimistically, this past year we got about 47 grand, I think, if I remember correctly, Don. I'm going to round it out to 50. I'm going to say 190. I'm going to say we're building out the new hospital. Our GRT might take a bump. Let's deal with the number $200,000. Now, that's how much Don has to deal with in his budget. Under municipal property tax, and I'm not going to bore you again with this, but we did talk about this, we are the 12th lowest municipal property tax in the state out of 106 communities. We get $149,000 a year from property tax, which is nothing. However, I'm on a fixed income. I got to write that check twice a year. It hurts, it hurts. But I broke down what the percentage of our taxes and what the city is getting, and the city's getting $38 a year of the green household money to help the city operate. That money goes into the general fund. I don't want to touch the general fund money. I want to start with Don's $200,000. So if you vote for this today, what you are going to be voting for is to ask staff to have Don, in the next 60 days, give us an analysis of what has to be done and what it's going to cost us, starting from $200,000. And basically, the number is going to be determined by how much he can do and his staff can do in 1 year. When the weather gets cold below a certain, they can't pour asphalt. You get rain days, you get just horrible things, and emergencies happen where you might have to pull a crew off a chip sealing job on this street because a water line has blown, and now we've got to deal with it at the street. And I also understand that there's technology that it doesn't make sense to fix a road where there potentially might be a leaking pipe, water pipe underneath it. That's dumb. There is technology that we can actually use to find out if there are pipes leaking in an area that we are going to be working in. And obviously, you have to address the leaking pipe first before you cover on the resurface. So my point is, if you feel comfortable with this idea, I don't want to ask staff to spend an ounce of time and energy and effort if there is no will on this commission to bring this to a March vote by the public. My challenge to Don would be, in 60 days, please come back and tell us we have 47 miles of streets. You told me that there was 17 miles of unpaved streets that were just sheer dirt. We have to prioritize, split up the city in zones. I don't want to work on all one zone and have, we can move it around so everyone gets a piece of the action. If you come back then and tell us, I need $500,000 to do a job every year, you got 200,000, we're looking for 300,000. You tell us it's going to take you 7 years to do what you want to do, that means we need over $2 million. That would be the bond. And that bond would only stay into effect until the job is over with. Then the property taxes, the local property tax, the city's portion of it, would revert back to where it is right now at 1.442 cents per dollars per thousand. So it's a time-sensitive project that the citizens will help pay for. It will be paid for by those who own homes. And obviously, if we have good streets and no potholes, it increases the value of your property and of your home. But this, I want to make sure that the citizens are comfortable with this, and therefore you will be the determining factor on whether we move forward with this type of project or not. Other than that, the choice is to go clunk, ka-clunk, ka-clunk, get nothing done. Our streets will erode. How the heck do you sell your house with a broker or by yourself and have someone bottom out on the way into your home, or go through a puddle that's over your hubcaps? And I'll take you on streets where that actually happens. We've got kids walking in 6 to 8 inch water because the school bus, it's unsafe for them to go on that road. It's out near Rodeo Arena, and I've been there during the flooding time, and I feel sorry for those families. There is no other way that I can see to come up with some large money other than what I'm suggesting. Manager Fuentes at our meeting yesterday pointed out that we did borrow $2 million maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago. I'm really not quite sure, that we're still paying off. And still, as Commissioner Clark talked about, water replacements, probably $30 million. I'm looking at $47 million in the ICIP. So probably the number is between 30 and 47 million. Where do we get our hands? How do we build our community and ask people to come into our community and show them around? And it's like a war zone on some of our streets. I mean, it's horrible, and it actually sends the wrong message as far as I'm concerned, especially around City Hall. I mean, my Lord, you know, if we can't take care of our own, how can we expect everyone else to take care of theirs? So that's where I'm at with this. This is the third time that I have brought this up. I think it's important to, someone had mentioned, it's not only important what's under the ground, it's important what people are riding on, walking on. It's a safety issue, it's a visual issue, it's an economic development issue. We can't grow our community unless we, the citizens ourselves, because there's only so much government can do. There is only so much government can do. As you know, that we lost money from Santa Fe because they're having a problem balancing their budget called Small City Assistance. We lost $400,000 or more in the last 2 years because of that. So we can't expect Santa Fe to bail us out if we're not willing to put our hands in our own pockets for the benefit of not only our own property, but our next door neighbor's property as well, and overall for the community. So that's where I'm coming with this. It would be, if you vote for it, it would basically be to authorize us going to publication for a bond to be decided by the citizens after Don comes back and gives us the number that he needs.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Commissioner, just to add on top of that, I think part of the task and the information coming back will be not just to identify the need on the roads, but also to identify which method is best for certain roads. Because I know when the city obtained the $2 million loan, there was a lot of chip sealing that was done. But some roads may require complete rehab, tearing up and repaving completely with new asphalt. So part of that, Don, might have to be identifying those sort of roads, because then that determines the cost is going to be different. Chip sealing versus a complete rehab. The other part, I think, if the commissioner decides to move forward with this directive to staff, is to also have the financing, the financial part of it, where Mark Valenzuela can come back and present, for example, identifying a number and saying this is how the GO bond process works, and he can take the commission through that whole financial process, because there is to put it on the ballot, it will require probably an ordinance and then a certain time frame, and that could be part of the discussion when we bring it back.
And I guess, Manager Fuentes, correct me if I'm wrong, and with that thought process, once staff, Don and his team, gets back to you and tells you this is what's going to cost, this is what our department can do every year, then we have to take that and equate it to what the increase in property tax we would ask to be on that bond issue.
Right.
Because that's the funding source that's going to retire the bond for a specific period of time.
Yes, and that's why I'm saying that Mark would help with that whole process.
Okay, so you've heard me talk about this third time, and, I know you're all fed up with it already, but this is the best I can do on how to handle this major. There is money out there for water, because we're colonious, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, for replacement of pipes, and I know that we have some applications in, and the manager has appeared before different boards up in Santa Fe, but I cannot think of another way to do this where it would really have a physical and a visual impact on our community other than to do it this way. And I am certainly open to any suggestions that anyone has, but to get it on, Clerk Canton brought it up at the meeting yesterday, that there would be a time schedule that we would have to do, that she would have to do, to make sure this gets on the ballot for March. So we don't have a lot of time. We cannot kick this can down the road. This is basically last gas station before going on desert. If we want to do it in March, then we would have to wait, either have a special election, which is going to cost us $6 to $8 grand, which I just think is a waste of money to do it that way, or wait 2 more years until the next election cycle comes up in 2020. So I think it's either now or whatever. So that's, you've heard me. Anyone concerned, ideas?
Just a comment.
Go ahead.
I think that the proposal that you're putting forward to the public is, it's the public that keeps commenting to us, fix the road, fix the road, fix the road, fix the road. Colonians can't do it. We're having difficulty finding money other places. People want, if they are willing to tax themselves to have their roads paved, then they're making the decision. And we're giving the people the option to make the decision and not making that decision on their behalf. And I kind of like that concept.
I kind of thought you would. Having served with you for all those years. Okay.
That's my comment.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments or discussion? Otherwise, I will stand for a motion. And I would like to make that motion, if I may, to start a process to authorize staff to do due diligence, and Don has heard our discussions, to get back to Manager Fuentes in a timely fashion, so we know what we're looking at and what mountain we have to climb, and work with Mark Vanzuela, so we end up, the ultimate result will be in the citizens' check on that ballot, or no check, in March. That's the motion. Move forward with this and put it on the ballot, let the citizens decide. Do I have a second?
Second.
I'll second that.
I have a tie for a second of Commissioner Heschler and Commissioner Clark. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously. Thank you for your support, each and every one of you. I appreciate it. And thanks for the citizens. You will have an opportunity to kind of determine what you want your city to look like. And we appreciate that. The next item is G2, SCRTA contract and future participation. Manager Fuentes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Commissioners, I know this item was tabled at the last, on July 26th, but just wanted to kind of give you all an update. Mickey is Executive Director of SCRTA, is present with us today, and I'm pleased to report that the meeting has been changed to, I believe it's going to be now the third Wednesday of each month. And so the city will have or two primary representatives at those meetings. I certainly want to extend my appreciation to Miki and the chair for making, and the other members for making that change. But I know Mayor Pro Tem Whitehead requested this item. Again, it was tabled. Now we're bringing it back just for final, just to close the matter. And I'll stand for any questions for additional comments from the commission.
Any questions, comments, concerns, Commissioners?
Mr. Mayor, all I wanted was just an update. I know that it had been postponed and nothing had been put back on the agenda, and the public did not know what the final outcome was. So
Excellent.
thank you for your update.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any comments?
Just a couple of
Yes,
general
sir.
comments.
Sure, of course.
if I may. And it was good that SCRTA moved their, well, we were able to move those meetings up there, but I had a couple of other concerns involving SCRTA, and maybe it just comes from a viewpoint, having been with State Parks and participated with SCRTA in the past, it seems like there's equal representation amongst all the communities, but there's unequal payment to SCRTA by all the communities. And so my thought is that perhaps we should look at our participation in SCRTA in accordance with how much we pay to SCRTA to have those services. And maybe having equal representation all the way across the board, it doesn't give us the opportunity to have SCRTA service in the way that we want to sometimes. And I know we pay the lion's share of SCRTA in the amount of $140,000. There's another entity that is a member, and that's New Mexico State Parks, that doesn't have any representation. And I'm just wondering if generally maybe we shouldn't revisit those contracts and look at them and perhaps readjust our participation or readjust participation in SCRTA in accordance with how much we pay, so that we take some of the, I think we'll take some of the politics out of the background, some of the infighting that has occurred in the past, and just a general comment of mine.
Thank you. In fact, actually, there was an article in one of the papers that the hospital had some issues also with non-representation on the board.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, and I can address that. Yes, that is correct. The hospital governing board did also postpone the agreement with SCRTA to ask the question whether it would be feasible and a request to consider having a voting member representative of the hospital, since they also pay a large amount as well towards SCRTA. So they did table it, and Mickey is here hearing the comments, so definitely that will be discussed at the next meeting.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Anything else? I support your theory 100%, and there is a precedent. If you take a look at the hospital governing board, TRC owns 40% of the hospital. We have 3 representatives. The county owns 40% of the hospital. County has 3 representatives. Elephant View owns 15% of the hospital. They have 2 representatives. Williamsburg owns 5% of the hospital. They have 1 representative. So certainly, this is not breaking new ice. There is a reason where people who are putting in $140,000 as compared to someone who's putting in $5,000 or $6,000, in the eyes of God, we're all equal, but maybe not when it comes down to boards and so I don't want to belabor that point, but I do want to thank Mickey. I want to thank Sheriff Hamilton. I want to thank the board for listening to our concerns, hearing our concerns, and acting in a favorable way, in a favorable outcome for us. There is one person who I want to thank. If they are listening, I will not mention their name because I did not ask permission to use their name, but there was someone who I did speak to and asked them to reach out on behalf of the city to maybe put out a little bit of a fire that was brewing, and hopefully we would reach a happy outcome. That has happened. So for that person, if you're listening, thank you again. I appreciate it, and I owe you one. All right, action, is there any action needed on this?
No, Mr. Mayor, as the Mayor Pro Tem, just for an update.
Okay. H1, let me ask you a question. Does anyone want to take a 3-minute break before we go on? Jay? Okay. We will be in recess for 3 minutes. All right. Thank you for your indulgence. We are all detanked and ready to go. I appreciate it. The next item on our agenda is H1 The bid award for the Airport Fuel Farm Schedule Number 3. Our presenter is Pat Wood, our Certified Purchasing Officer.
Good morning, Mayor, Commissioners. We're here to discuss, take action on ITB 16-17-003, bid award to construct aviation fuel farm Schedule 3. The bid opening for this was held on June 27th at 2 p.m. We received only one bid for this project. Delta Airport Consultants, our engineers on this project are recommending to award the bid to CSW contractors, and the bid amount of $242,063.73, pending grant funding from FAA and the New Mexico DOT Aviation Division. We've already applied for the grants, we just haven't received the grants yet.
So then the bid award would be contingent upon us being funded?
Yes, sir.
And Ms. Wood, also, unless I misunderstood you, I thought you said 16-17-003.
7.
007.
Did I say 3?
I have 007 on my sheet. Okay. Any questions? Concerns? Stand for motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the ITB 16-17-007 bid award to construct aviation fuel farm Schedule 3 as presented by Pat Wood, and that bid going to CSW Contractors, Inc. in the amount of $242,063.73, and this is pending the grant funding approval from FAA and NMODOT Aviation Division.
Excellent. I have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem White. I need a second.
Second, Mayor.
I have a second by Commissioner Hessler. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Number 2, thank you. Discussion action, cell tower lease agreement at Louis Armijo Sports Complex. Robbie Travis, our building inspector, will be presenting this item.
Good morning, Mayor, Commissioners. This is a cell tower lease agreement at Louis Armijo Sports Complex. This is Sun State Towers is requesting to lease property at the park, Louis Armijo Sports Complex, for the installation of a cell tower. The project will be replacing an existing light pole with a tower and then putting the lights back on the cell tower there at the same height. This property is in a T1 zone, which allows for public towers as permitted by use by right. Staff would recommend approval of the lease that was John Appel has already reviewed. We've been working with this company for about 6 months or so, trying to negotiate and get everything lined up. You have the plans in there, and then also the lease. And I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Travis. Any questions or concerns, comments?
Mr. Mayor, let me just make a few comments. I know Mr. Appel's the one that drew this up, but I decided to take a look at it anyway, since for some reasons I'm sitting here, so I figured I better read this. And actually, there are a couple of things I didn't understand, and I did call Mr. Appel yesterday, and he did answer my questions, but nevertheless, I thought it might be beneficial for you just to know what questions I had and really how they were answered, and so let me just take a moment here. The two big questions I was looking at, and this is true of any lease, I was trying to just get a handle on my own mind. How long does this lease last? And how and when do you get the money for the rental? And I'll tell you where I was concerned, but then I'll tell you how the questions got answered. So if you wouldn't mind, take a look for a moment on page 2 of the lease agreement under paragraph 1, business and defined terms. And I'll tell you why I was confused about the rental period. Because if you take a look under E, you'll see the phrase initial option period 12 months, and then letter F, renewal option period, 1 period of 12 months. Then you look on the next page, and you'll see on letter K, initial term 5 years, commencing in the commencement date, et cetera. And then on letter L, there was a provision, renewal terms, each of the 5 successive periods of 5 years each. So that was, I'm reading that, that's what the term period states, and I'll get into that in just a moment. And then I guess regarding the monetary consideration, my question there was, if you take a look at letter H, it says option consideration 1,000, and then on letter I on the next page, option extension consideration 1,000, and then on letter N, you'll see a monthly amount of $950, and then it calls for, on paragraph O, 10% increases over the next successive terms. So what does all that mean? I was trying to figure out really how long is this lasting, and really what's the what's the monetary consideration. So I spoke with John Appel, and here's what I've come up with. So going back to again to letter E, there's an initial option period of 12 months, and what that means is actually the lease really hasn't taken effect yet. This is basically just we're offering Sun State the option to enter into this lease pursuant to the terms of the lease. If they exercise the option, that's fine, and that's set forth on paragraph 2E on page 4, that they would give you a written notice that they're exercising the lease, or they may do nothing, and if nothing happens during that first year, and by the way, they paid you $1,000 for the first year, then if nothing happens in the first year, then automatically it kicks into a second option year, and that's stated again on on paragraph, let's see, I had it marked here, about extensions. Oh yeah, paragraph 2B. So they're paying another $1,000. So basically, what could happen is that 2 years go by where they actually, the lease hasn't really gone into effect yet. We've been giving Sun State this option to tell us they want to enter into this lease. So they're giving $1,000 for the option the first year, and if they still haven't made a decision, they have a second year to do the same thing. And then, if they assuming they then go ahead and tell you, yes, we want to go ahead and enter into this lease, then they will give you the written notice that they will do that, and then letter K then kicks in. So you have the 5-year period as the initial term, and then solely in Sun State's discretion. Now you have to understand, this is up to them to make the decision. They can then decide to renew the lease for, as pursuant to paragraph L, 5 successive periods of 5 years each. So what am I saying here? The total amount we're talking about would be the 1 year. How long can this contract go into last? We're talking about 1 year plus 1 year plus 5 years, and then plus 5 times 5. So it's a total of 32 years. And as I already discussed, the money you'd be getting $1,000 for the first year, $1,000 for the second year. Then you'd be getting $950 a month for a 5-year period. So that's really basically years 3 through well, be starting the 3rd year, ending the 7th year. And then if it goes, if it's renewed, then you'd be getting a 10% increase, which so you take the $950 a month, multiply that by 10%, so that'd be $1,045 a month for the next 5 years, and so on and so on. So I just thought you'd be interested. That's what I found out. I don't know if that means anything to anybody, but just want to throw that out for you.
Thank you. Questions, concerns from the commission?
Attorney Rubin, so that was kind of a long-winded way of saying that maybe you're not comfortable with the rental agreement that we've got coming down here for the money that they're going to be paying us?
No, I didn't mean that at all. And actually, I spoke with Mr. Appel, and he's the one that negotiated this. He feels it's a good deal for the city. I just wanted you to be aware of of the terms here. And this is actually typical for a lot of these leases. I'm not going to say this is atypical. And there actually are some provisions in the lease that that Mr. Appel made sure we're in there to protect us. But just so you understand, we're talking about, we're giving the Sun States the option to decide basically over a 2-year period whether to enter into this. And then if they decide, yes, they want to, then we have another 5 years and then another 30 years. And it's really up to them to make these decisions to keep the renewal. And the only way we'd be able to terminate it, only if they're in default. There's not a provision there to terminate the lease for convenience. So no, don't get what I'm saying wrong, that I'm saying that you shouldn't enter into this. I just wanted you to be aware of what the terms were and the amount of money you're getting.
And one of the reasons they ask for the initial periods is they have to do environmental studies and all kinds of reports to FCC, I think it is, and different things, and they need a time period to get that through. Now, because we've been working on it for 6 months already, I think this one's probably going to initiate within the 1 year period, but they like to have that, and it was the same way with the other tower company that we were dealing with, exact type of terms.
So, Robbie, did we look into Sun State Towers as a company? It's an LLC in Delaware, which is kind of a big flag. And then they're from Gilbert. And then have they already rented tower space to Verizon? Can they do like the broad area that, you know, the other outfit was looking at by going up on the water top hill? You know, have we done any research on this outfit, or are they just one of those guys that's coming in and saying, well, you can put up a tower whether you like it or not because of the FCC rules and regulations?
Yeah, they're one of the acquisition companies, one of many, I think, and but this tower here would not help us in the downtown area. This is mainly for the west end of town, you know, through Williamsburg, the I-25 corridor going through there. That area is what it is for. I know John Appel did research Sun State Towers a little bit because they had said, you know, Sun Towers and then Sun State Towers in several of their leases, but that's as far as I know that we went with it.
You know, and to elaborate a little bit further on what Robbie said, yes, it's true during the option period. We would expect that some states will be active in going after the property. And again, I'm looking at paragraph 2D, and then I guess there's a Roman numeral 2, that they may enter the property, perform or cause to be test borings of the soil, environmental audits, engineering studies. So I would anticipate that there will be some active investigation during this option period.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions or concerns from the commission? So, Robbie, we know for a fact proven that 80-foot tower at the complex will not hit the downtown.
Yes, I'm almost positive of that, but you know, we didn't ask that question to them or anything, but that's not, you know, it's so far away that, you know, I think that the one hill at the Veterans and Cielo Vista subdivision kind of blocks it from coming on into downtown, but we didn't ask those questions. We just, this was another tower company that was wanting to come in down at that end of town, and it's in a good area, it doesn't hurt anybody. You know, we met with Gloria and Dawn and went over all the locations of everything for the ball fields, made sure it didn't interrupt the new soccer area, and so we think it's a good fit where it's going and going to work good.
Commissioner Clark, FYI, one of my businesses was not in Delaware, but we were registered and licensed and incorporated in Delaware for tax reasons. So I don't think...
Me too, so I know that answer.
Yeah. So I don't think just because they're in Delaware, I appreciate your red flag, but that's more taxes than anything else. So, all right, any further questions? Then someone want to make a motion to have staff move forward with this? I will make a motion to authorize staff to move forward with negotiations on a cell tower lease agreement at Louis R. Mio Sports Complex. Negotiations between the city of Truth or Consequences and Sun State.
Well, Mr. Mayor, just for clarification, this is the agreement.
Oh, this is the
Yes,
agreement.
this
Okay,
would
so
be
I
the
move for
agreement.
approval of the agreement then between the city and Sun State Towers 3 LLC from Gilbert, Arizona. I have a second by Commissioner Frankel. Is there any further discussion or concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously. Thank you. Number H3 is a repeat of F2, amendment to the City Commission Rules of Procedure related to recusals. And Attorney Rubin kind of explain that, if you have any final thoughts on that, Jay? Or?
No, I guess the comment was made when we were discussing F2, that this needs also to be applying to the City Commission. That's what this H3 does.
Okay. So, any concerns, comments? Hearing none, I will stand for a motion, please.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the amendment to the City Commission Rules of Procedure related to recusals as presented earlier by Jay Rubin, our attorney, and
I have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Whitehead. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Commissioner Hessler. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. Commissioner Clough? Okay. And one, please let the record show, one nay. 4-1 carries. Next item is an update and a discussion. We have heard some of the emails that were sent into the Commissioner's office for maybe coming up with some guidelines at the gun range. And Police Chief Ramirez and Don Arvio, our Public Works Director, will be the presenters on that item.
Good morning, Mayor Pro Tem, City Commissioners. A couple of weeks ago, as addressed in some of those letters, we did have an entity in the city go out and detonate some Tenerac out there at the range, which in itself is not illegal to possess, and it is used for target practicing and so forth. It's not conducive to the community or to that location to have it there. So we were able to find some guidelines, some general range rules for the Adobe Hill shooting range. So the big question I had was, well, who oversees this? And it appears that there's been several groups in the past that have. The Mud Springs Plinkers Association did at one time. And then we have a couple other stakeholders in the community that oversee that. I think what we would like to do is go over the rules, add some stuff to prevent these type of things from occurring in the future, put some signage. I am reaching out to some of our community stakeholders that have a big interest in the range because that's their hobby and so forth. And I want to make sure that these new rules are inclusive with them as well so that they have some input. The signage will include the police department's number, because we're here 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. And should they're going to be having an event that I would say, hey, are we getting close to these guidelines? We're going to have some input. We had over 51 noise complaints that day. So it was definitely taxed our resources as well. We were unaware that they were going to be doing that. Definitely not the location for that at all. So my desire to proceed on this is get a hold of all our stakeholders, get them in the same room, let's talk about what the guidelines should look at. And there may be someone in that room that's going to have such an incredible idea and we're going to say, wow. So I do want to reach out to them, come up with some new guidelines and bring them back to the commission for adoption and set up a protocol that if someone should have an event, just like they're going to use the community center here, that there is a chain, there's a process for addressing that so we can make sure that they are hand-given a set of guidelines, they sign for them knowing, and that there is some penalty for violating those. I agree, all the animals that were, scared, and I don't know, I don't have the numbers of how many animals ran away because of that. Horses, I mean, some of our seniors were really shaken up by that all day because it was one after the other. So that's the direction we'd like to go.
In the interim, we were given direction by Manager Fuentes to get some signs made up that said no explosive devices until further notice. Those signs, I got them yesterday. I was gone yesterday, and so they picked them up. They're sitting in the shop now, so we're going to have those installed out at the gun range, and that's exactly what they'll say, is no explosives until further notice. So that while we're going through this process of going through to get a new set of range rules and make sure that we all, because I'm pretty sure that this 10-tonight, whatever it is that they're using, Tenerife, is it's getting. I mean, you watch them on the oh, I can't think of the name of it now, on Facebook. They're blowing things up all over the place, you know, so I'm pretty sure if they're using it on gun ranges, of course, you know how it is, if you're supposed to use just a little bit of it to explode your target, you know, so we'll use 50 pounds of it and see what happens, so. I'm sure other gun rangers are gonna start running into this thing, so, it'll be good to reach out and, meet with some of these other people and talk with them and get a good thing. I think she's got a good thing going here. But in the meantime, those signs will probably go up. If I can get them installed, they'll either go up this afternoon or tomorrow morning, and we'll have them up, and they will be in place about no explosives until we can get a decision on this, what we're gonna do.
Questions, ideas? If we have the gun range listed as an asset on our website, we should put this information on the website of the city as well, because people, I don't have a computer, as you know, but people do use computers to gather information and to garner information. And Chief, when you're meeting with other people and concerns and coming up with a plan, I would just like to remind you of what the Mr. and Mrs. Eastfold were talking about. Turner Expeditions has a new person now on staff, on board, operating out of the Vera of the Sierra Grande, and they will be doing ecotourisms, and they are going to be going out, quote unquote, into the desert, not up where the Ladder Ranch is, but up around and west of our airport. They're going to use some of that open land, that BLM land outside of the city land, for birding and exploring, and they're going to have archaeological people with them. So we should also, when we're trying to come up with the quote-unquote ideal place that will have negative impact other than noise, I would just appreciate if you just keep that in the back of your mind. And when I can get more specifics from Turner Expeditions, I will let you know. Right now, I just got a phone call last week, and they want to meet us. Basically, I can tell you about that right now.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to suggest too that although the chief did mention to get a hold of all the stakeholders, I would like this to be like a public workshop where not only the stakeholders, but all the residents that have questions and thoughts and ideas about the gun club that may not necessarily use the gun club. It's very important for everyone to come together, and then also maybe put out a potential quorum notice when you do have these meetings, so that any of us commissioners would like to attend, we can also do that.
Absolutely.
Good. All right, any further questions? Thank you for the update. Let's hope we don't have a repeat of what happened last weekend. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Appreciate it. Last item on our agenda is to equalize the airport GRT rate with the rest of the city. That is mine. Basically what happened when we were talking about property taxes and GRT taxes, and everyone kept on nailing us that we're the fourth largest, highest GRT in the state, and it just didn't sound right to me. So I asked Clerk Canton to go on the state's website and get us some information, which he did. And at a meeting of Manager Fuentes, Melissa Torres, Renee, and myself, we literally all looked at the same page on the same item, and we said, holy mackerel, the GRT at the airport's different than the rest of the community. So basically, I have found out, as you all know, out at the airport, there is no GRT being collected on our hangar rentals because they're more than 30 days. There is no GRT on avgas. Don't ask me why, but there is GRT on jet fuel. So we are not getting that GRT. It's been coded differently than the rest of the city, and right now the airport is at 6.9375, and the rest of the community is at 8.500. We have a hangar out there that potentially could be used not only for storage of planes, the York and Pippin hangar, but for manufacturing to come in of an aviation-related product. We have the LaFont brothers, who evidently are not flying, and they have a very large facility on our property there, on that hangar, and that might be something we might want to sit down at some particular point and talk to them about. Some major assets, almost 9,000 square feet, that can be used for manufacturing to support Spaceport America. So we thought that let's position the airport to have the same GRT as the rest of the city. It's ridiculous for us to give up 1.5% for what? There's no rhyme or reason for it. So I would ask my fellow commissioners, if you are okay with this, is to authorize staff to move forward to take the necessary measures that they have to do, whether it be tax and rev or whatever agency they're dealing with, to equalize and increase that airport GRT. Any questions, concerns, ideas?
I got a really good question. So that city property, when we put in an increase for a tax, and we tax ourselves to 8.5%, how did the airport get exempted from part of that?
I think, Manager Fuentes, if I go off the rails here, please tell me. Commissioner Clark, when we, working with the Boundary Commission, this is back in, not this present administration, but back in 2002, whoever was there then, when we annexed that land, that was in the county, and we brought that land into the geographic boundaries of the city, and I think it was an oversight on someone's part to notify Tax and Rev that that land was no longer in the county, but it was in the city, and they forgot to file the appropriate forms that would allow the GRT at the airport, since it's now city land, to be equalized from the rest of the community. Whatever the GRT was at that particular rate, it has just stuck there, and as we have moved forward, so there's nothing we can do. We've checked, we can't recapture that lost money, but I think it behooves us to position ourselves to move forward to be fair and equal to everyone in the community, of having an equal GRT, and if we are able to develop the airport under economic development and utilize that, although we know it's restricted, it has to be for aviation purposes, I want to make sure that we're getting the maximum GRT that we are legally able to collect at the airport. So that's why I'm asking for the authorization for staff to take the necessary steps to make it happen.
Okay, so just the other comments are, one, it is City of Super Consequences property, and in our tax bracket, it is 8.5%, and there would have to be an entirely different tax district in Super Consequences to be able to separate the airport from us. And that would have to be administratively, from what I understand, from up in Santa Fe. So it was definitely an oversight, if you're correct. And two, the other question is, exactly what does that mean to us to make certain that they're paying through the consequences rate? What does that mean to our GRT? Exactly what kind of dollars are you talking about?
Well, in answer to your question, Manager Fuentes and City Clerk Canton and Deputy Clerk Torres and myself met with two women from Tax and Rev yesterday, had a very fruitful discussion, talking about capturing GRT and don't letting things fall through your fingers. So there is a way, once this happens, that Ms. Canton can track the GRT to make sure that it is being appropriated to the right entity. It's being allocated to the right entity. So that would be one part of the question. And what was it? The other part of the question was what? How many dollars is it? I think very simple. Just go back.
It needs to be a separate tax district.
No, it doesn't.
If it's not a separate tax district, what does this mean in terms of, GRT revenue to the city through the consequences?
Very simple. Take last year's budget, see how much aviation fuel we sold, jet fuel we sold, and see the difference in the present GRT tax that we're collecting now as compared to the 8.5, and that's your answer. I haven't done it. Frankly, Commissioner Clark, it's not a fortune of money. But why should we leave a dime on the table, number one, and let's prepare, we're talking about an ICIP moving forward. Let's prepare for development at the airport and collect the GRT that we are entitled to, the amount that we are entitled to.
Yeah, I'm definitely not arguing.
Okay, no, I understand, and it's about,
How did we miss this one?
well, we didn't. Someone in 2002 missed it. That's all I can say.
Exactly.
So it's a question of,
Well, good work.
well, it was four people looking at a piece of paper, and we all literally, our eyes popped out of our heads when we both looked at one another and said, why is this happening? So, exactly right. So, you're entirely welcome. I appreciate that, and I appreciate your comments. So I would need a motion, just as the agenda item, to authorize staff to equalize the airport GRT rate with the rest of the city.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. I have a motion by Commissioner Clark. I need a second.
I'll second that.
I have a second by Mayor Pro Tem Whitehead. Is there any further concerns, ideas? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you. And thanks for those sharp eyes at that meeting that caught this. Appreciate it. The next item is report, City Manager.
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, just one quick item. I did put in your seats location a notice invitation for the ribbon cutting ceremony this Monday, August 28th at 1 p.m. at the Gardner Learning Center for the offices reopening for the New Mexico Workforce Solutions. They're already out there. It looks great. Staff has done an excellent job cleaning up the place. New Mexico Workforce Solutions is setting it all up. Adult Educational Services is having classes already there. So we want to make sure everybody's aware to come out and just join for the ribbon cutting ceremony. And that's part one. Part two, obviously, we'll be working with Representative Dow and Western New Mexico University, so we can make sure that classes are offered next semester for our students who want to take online classes there. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Attorney Rubin.
I have the report, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Whitehead.
No report, thank you.
Commissioner Heschler.
No report, Mayor.
Commissioner Clark.
No, good, thanks.
Okay, Commissioner Franco.
No report.
Okay, I'm going to break with tradition. I am going to give a quick report. Very, very quickly, there is a scam going on in the community. We have notified Police Chief. We have notified Director of Finance, who oversees the utility office, Melissa Torres. I want to thank KCHS. I believe they put some information out over the radio. Ms. Luna, thank you very much for that. And what it is this. Someone is calling and telling you that we are pulling the plug on your electricity within 2 hours unless you give them a credit card over the phone. This information came to me because they tried this stunt on one of our spas, and the manager called me and said, I want you to be aware. And they actually give you a 1-800 number. So I'm going to give you that number, because if you hear that number when you're talking to someone, you know this is absolutely BS. They call after 5 o'clock at night when the utility office is closed, so there's no way where you can verify it. But the number is 1-800-573-1870, extension 1000. If you get a call, the City of Truth or Consequences utility office does not operate this way. We do not threaten you, and we're going to put you in the dark within 2 hours unless you give us your credit card number. It doesn't work that way at all. So if you're listening, if you hear it, be advised, it is an absolute scam, and it has nothing to do with us at all, just someone trying to rip you off. And that is the end of my report. I see that we need executive session, so I will take a motion to go into executive session, please.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve going into executive session for threatened litigation for 714 Copra easement pursuant to 10-15-1H7.
I have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Whitehead. I need a second. Second by Commissioner Frankel. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we have roll call. Madam Clerk, please.
Honorable Steve Green?
Yes.
Honorable Sandra Whitehead? Aye. Honorable Ralph Hitchler?
Yes.
Honorable Kathy Clark?
Aye.
Honorable Joshua Franco?
Present.
All right, thank you. As soon as those who are in attendance, and we thank you for joining us, but now we are going to executive session. As soon as we have the hall empty, we will go right into executive session, pushing up the lunch break. So we will come out of executive session. I will need someone to stipulate, please.
Mr. Mayor, I certify that only matters pertaining to threatened litigation at 714 Copra easement pursuant to 10-15-1H7 was discussed and no action was taken.
Okay, is there a motion?
I move to authorize staff and attorney to work on a negotiation to settle this dispute
Fine.
and move forward.
Should we just put the address?
Oh, this dispute at 714 Copra regarding
Okay.
the easement.
All right, I have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Whitehead. Do I have a second? I will second. Commissioner Frankel nodded. He seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, carries unanimously. Thank you. Have a wonderful
I
day and a
move we
week.
adjourn.
Good moving. Thank you. All right. Kathy, feel better. Okay.
Kathy, if you get a chance, I have a card for Judy Harris at the office.
Okay.
Maybe,
Sign
yeah.
happen.
I'll get with you sometime, yeah, to sign it.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Okay, bye. All right.
Here's my envelope, Mayor.
I'm sorry?
Here's the original.
Oh, okay.
You're yellow,
Yeah.
one is red, so there's two bigger ones.
Okay, I can get them right.
Yeah, we have birthday
Okay.
party.
Do it. Go to my birthday party. You guys want pizza?
Oh, God.
Pizza.
I've got a meeting down in Las Cruces that I am gonna have to run like hell with.